Could Toqger be adapted into a dark and fairly mature season? Absolutely. And I'm about to explain how it could possibly be done. Now, when fans of Power Rangers look for a prime example of a dark Power Rangers season, they usually turn to Power Rangers RPM, with its post-apocalyptic scenario and the dark elements that go with it. Here's the thing though, if Toqger is to have a dark and mature tone in their series, it would still have to be its own identity. I don't think a post-apocalyptic scenario would work, unless they do it in the middle of the series, or something like that. The reason why RPM worked as a dark season with its post-apocalyptic setting was because that situation complemented both the heroes and the villains. Given that Toqger had cars versus robots, RPM was basically Terminator/Mad Max, and with that, it all fitted into place. Now, for Toqger to work with that dark tone, it needs to complement the two factions within the show. So what can we use as an example in order to complement these things? Let's see. Evil creatures from a dark dimension whose goal is to shroud the world in darkness and are usually foiled by young individuals with special powers, and those set people go to different realms in order to stop said strange creatures. That sounds like a premise as old as the 80s. And what comes to mind are these things, like It, The Goonies, The Lost Boys, and other shows of the like. Basically, the Power Rangers equivalent of Stranger Things. But a very good prime example is the program Gravity Falls, which is also dark and suitable and entertaining with fun, wholesome moments. And while there will be a good chunk of light-hearted moments, you don't want to make the dark stuff contrived. Especially when you have light versus dark in the form of children's imaginations and spooky spirits from yesteryear. Now, whether the Rangers are children or teenagers or adults who are gifted with imaginations, that's not going to be an issue, since that kind of thing could go either way. The villains, on the other hand, not so much. Sure, they can be modified, and that's it. Speaking of, let's take a look at these shady figures, since they will be the drive to set the dark elements in motion. So the villains in Toqger are called the Shadow Line, and they basically look like a rubber-suited monster cast of Downton Abbey. But yeah, despite their old timey-wimey style of villainy, they still have a cosmic horror aspect to them. Much like Pennywise and Bill Cipher and some Lovecraftian horrors, which would make these guys very dangerous as Power Ranger villains. I mean, you could have these guys have a ghost train motif given their attire. Now, for those who underestimate these guys, let me give you an idea on how evil they can be. First off, right from the bat, they start off their evil goal by kidnapping children. More than once. Along with arson, starvation, making people beat the crap out of each other, biological warfare, plus a killer clown, or two, and a jester. And that's just for starters, like 1/3 of what they can do. If they go the dark route and adapt these parts, then we've got some boogeyman levels of evil right there. If they go the apocalypse route, it could happen right from the get-go, or have it happen midway through the series. If they go right from the get-go, things could go like a kiddies version of Dante's Inferno with torments galore. Then our heroes would travel from town to town, beating monster after monster, and making the world brighter and brighter. Then the bad guys will try and figure out a way to restore their darkness. If they have the apocalypse midway through the series, then it would fit with the premise much like Gravity Falls, with evil slowly creeping into our world until it consumes everything. Then our heroes face a major obstacle. Either way, both paths will have dark elements that will also be balanced by the light stuff, with our heroes merging victorious. As for the mature stuff, You could definitely add things like family plot lines and emotional moments. Even Toqger did that in many of its episodes, or at least a good chunk of it. There can also be tense moments as well. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've established. With a premise like a coming-of-age story, much like Stranger Things and Gravity Falls, which has likable and imaginative rangers that go on adventures, with darkness lurking at every corner, which has villains that are menacing and powerful, as well as adding an emotional roller coaster along the way. And that pretty much sums up the key points. And that is how they can make Toqger into a dark, mature season.